right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to VeriTalks, Verita International School's third interactive conversation around the school and around our philosophy, our principles, our curriculum. We're very excited to be hosting this talk tonight because we have Leslie Wolper, our academic director, and Mason McCormick, our curriculum director, also the principal of the earlier school, early and middle years, early and primary school at our sister school in Bucharest, Romania, and a thought leader in the IEYC and IPC curriculums, who's been developing and has really put together an amazing program for the Verita School. Tonight, we're going to go through a very simple question and answer session. We're going to bring up some of the most frequently asked questions from the parents who we've been meeting with and talking with, from the parents who have enrolled in our school. We're very excited. Despite what's been happening with this global pandemic, we've been getting a tremendous response at the school. People are very excited and very engaged and very committed to this new thought in education. And we're really honored to be able to bring this to Greece and to bring this to you. I want to wish everyone good health, a very happy Easter, and just thank you for participating in tonight's discussion. And feel free to message us any questions. We'll be taking questions live and responding to them as appropriate. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our speakers and get this started. Welcome, Mason.
Hi there.
Mason McCormick, and this is Leslie Wolper. So I'll get this started and enjoy.
All right.
Okay, Mason. So I'm going to begin with a rather important question. Is what is so special about a Verita education, and why should I trust Verita International School and bring my child there?
This is a question I get all the time. So I've taught in Asia, in Africa, in the Middle East, in Europe, and at some of these great big schools. And I joined Verita because of its mission. So when I heard about this school that's centered around kindness, I wanted to know what that looked like. And I think that that's something that our parent community also grabs onto. So we're probably one of the only schools that right at the center of our mission statement says everything we do is centered around kindness. And I think that's a powerful place for us to start. Now, in order to be able to live that mission and bring a quality education along with being kind and being good humans, one of the approaches that we take very seriously is our social emotional learning program. So not only do we want students to be academically strong, but we want them to have a strong moral compass. We want them to have emotional intelligence. We want them to be resilient, to be inquirers, to be communicators. And we think that those skills are just as important as your academic skills. Now, the other thing we do is we teach that through an approach called inquiry. We don't just think of students as empty vessels that we need to fill with knowledge. We see them as thinkers and learners and collaborators, and we want them to be able to ask questions, to be researchers, to be self-managers, and be able to experience and explore the world around them rather than telling them how to think and telling them what to think, because we believe that that prepares them for the 21st century. So even though we're doing things different, we're kind, we're creative, we're inquirers, the reason that you should trust Verita is we're getting the same results or better results. So at our school in Romania, we've just had our inspection from the Council of International Schools. And there were several commendations about the amazing things we're doing in relation to social emotional learning. Additionally, our international school assessment results just came back, and across the school, our students are scoring at the world standard or above. So it just shows that what we're doing, even though we're adding on social emotional learning and that we're teaching our curriculum through inquiry, what we're doing is working.
Well, that does sound terrific, and all of it sounds fabulous. but can you tell me like what curriculums do you like? What curriculum do you use? Because that sounds great, but what curriculum do you use? Like, what do you follow as a school?
So we're a British school. We run on the national curriculum of England and Wales, but how we do that is different. So we use an inquiry-based framework called the International Primary Curriculum or the International Early Years Curriculum for our littlest learners. And what I like to think about or give the visual of is that the British curriculum is the engine of the vehicle, and the international primary curriculum and our inquiry-based frameworks are what drive that, so that our students still get the rigor and knowledge that's research-based from the British curriculum that the world accepts as a wonderful curriculum, but the way we do that is different, and it makes them thinkers. It makes them not just have knowledge, but they're able to harness some skills and understanding to sort of have the full picture. In addition to that, we use a program out of Emory University in the United States for our social emotional learning. And that program is called Social Emotional and Ethical Learning. And it's endorsed by the Dalai Lama and is being disseminated all over the world. So though we're a British curriculum school, we use a lot of frameworks to help us drive the British curriculum and take something that's potentially older and stuffier and make it fun and creative and exciting for the students. Because we believe that when students are active and engaged, they're better learners.
Exactly. So true. And so can you tell me what a typical day looks like at Verita and how some of these things that you were talking about is implemented into the classroom, and give us examples of how you teach the social emotional learning, how you do the inquiry-based learning, and like what does a day look like for a student?
So I think that question leads me to the type of school we are. There's really no such thing as a typical day. Every day, depending on the inquiry, the entry, the moment of the curriculum, it looks different. So our day does begin at 8. That's when our before care begins, where students can enter and have some play and be cared for before school for parents that need to get to work. But at 8:45, students have 15 minutes to have a soft start. So school begins at 9, and parents can drop off anytime before then. But just like you and I as adults who like to maybe listen to some music, have a coffee, greet our coworkers at work, we believe that kids need a soft start as well. So those 15 minutes from 8:45 until 9 o'clock give students a sense to just come in and settle into school rather than the type of typical day many of us grew up with where the bell rings at 9 o'clock and the day begins right away. In addition to that, children are given 2 large breaks for outdoor time as they get older. The earlier spend plenty of time outdoors as part of their program. And teachers give a lot of brain breaks throughout the day as the kids need them. So rather than having set 15-minute breaks here and there, if the kids are deep and engaged in their learning, the teacher can carry that on. Or if they notice that kids are fidgeting or moving and need a break, they're given the flexibility to provide that, whether it's movement or mindfulness. The day also begins with a mindfulness session across the school where kids can come in, they can get settled in, and they can find their calm and get into that optimal zone for learning at the beginning of the day. Now, a typical day looks different in any situation. So because of our inquiry-based curriculum, sometimes there is an astronaut that's landed on the playground and the kids are trying to figure out where it's come from and how it is and digging deep and inquiring. Other times we're outside tracking insects. It really depends on what's happening that day. We don't believe in having a blocked schedule with maths and literacy and science. While we know that everything will get covered in the day, how each day looks will be different depending on how the children are learning, what their mood is, what the topic is that they're learning about. So we know that we need to cover it, but we trust our qualified teachers to be able to cater their program to the children rather than boxing them in and giving them a one-size-fits-all curriculum. Now, at the end of the day, our dismissal will be at 3:30, and our enrichment program begins at 4 o'clock, where kids will have a snack and some time to settle in before that. And then our after-school program will end at 5 p.m.
Wow. Okay. That's great. And now, so let's say we got an idea of the whole picture of the school, and now let's think of what happens on the first day of school. As we all know that the first day of school can be very challenging, not only for the students, but the parents as well. So could you tell me, um, how do you handle this transition? Like how do you make this, less difficult, less scary for the child, and how do you help us through this?
It's about being scared for the child, but it's also sometimes scary for the parents. I know a lot of you watching right now probably have 2 and 3 year old children that might be going to school for the first time. And we have to trust your school, and you're sending them to a wonderful place that cares for them, but there's that sense of, your baby going off to school. And I have that as well with my 3 year old. So what we need to do as parents is talk it through with them beforehand. So once you know your teacher's name, having that conversation in the car before bed at home, saying, when you get to school, Mrs. Leslie's going to play outside with you for an hour on the playground. Then you're going to have a snack. Walk them through the day. And at the end of it, saying, then I'll come and I'll take you home, reminding them that you're coming back and having that sense of reassurance in the car on a daily basis every time you drop off and pick up, because your children are smart and they will recognize this, even your little learners. But what's also important is that your children have emotional intelligence. And when you're having these conversations with them as parents, you need to remember that your cadence and your tone is important too. If you give off a sense of reassurance, your child will feel that. If you're giving off a sense that you're worried or you're upset, leaving your baby somewhere else, it gives them a sense of worry. So you really need to give them that sense of predictability, remind them that everything's going to be okay, and really reassure them. Another tip we give our parents is to create a consistent goodbye ritual. So you might give a high five, you might say, I love you, a kiss on both cheeks. It's going to be different for every family. And you probably already have one of these for when you drop your child off at grandma's house. But this routine shows your child to know what to expect. So your daily send off helps you limit yourself as well. So you won't be tempted to linger in the doorway or making the goodbye harder for both of you. So again, when you do this, watch your body language, smile. You're allowed to feel sad, but if you want your child to feel safe and secure in their new environment, you need to stand up straight, you need to smile, and you need to model that cheerful goodbye to show them that you're dropping them off at a safe space. Now, again, there's so many other strategies that we give our parents. Some children like to read stories like Llama Llama, Mrs. Mama, or The Kissing Hand, or even writing a social story with your child where they draw the pictures. It would be a simple story saying, when I go to school in the morning, I will say goodbye to my parents. Bye, again, with your ritual of fist bumps or high fives in your routine. I know that I will see them again after school. And then you can add pictures or photos or whatever you need, but end the story with, at the end of the day, mom or dad or the nanny will come to get me. I will go home and tomorrow I will go to school again. Just getting your child used to what's going to happen. And we know through our social emotional learning programs that stories are wonderful for children. Now, a lot of parents ask us if they can stay in the classroom on the first day or watch from the door. And we find that this creates a really strange relationship between you and your parent and your child and the teacher. So your child knows you're leaving. So if you make drop off really long, you know you're leaving, they know you're leaving, but nobody can really move on. So the linger doesn't prevent the sadness at the separation, it only prolongs it, and it confuses your child. So I think the most important part is to say goodbye and go and give them permission to be sad and move on, but do something. There's that in between sense of, should I play? Should I be sad? Should I be with mom? Should I be with the teachers when we linger? And we know that eventually you're going to leave anyway. So it's much easier to create a really strong goodbye routine with your child where they know you're leaving. And often they're going to cry. And as a school that values kindness and social emotional learning, we tell kids that tears are okay. So it can take anywhere from 1 day to weeks for a child to adjust to early years school. So you might see a few tears at drop off and you might see more at pickup. but your child has been saving them up for you all day. So everyone needs to decompress after a new moment and a new situation. And your child might not be able to do it any other way than crying. And this shouldn't make you question your decision about sending them to school unless this goes on for a long period of time. The tears are an important milestone for growing children. They learn to adapt to different social situations, and there might be different rules in that home, and that's hard. But this will help them with flexibility. It will help them with adapting, and it will help them become brave.
Yeah.
So they're learning about trust. They're learning that they can handle these emotions and separations. And they're learning to be who they are independently and that they're brave. And I think that's such a strong and powerful moment for little learners. And it's difficult for parents. So we always tell our parents to talk about their feelings with a friend, or plan a coffee date after drop off with another parent and go through that together. So being strong for our kids, but also being strong for each other. As a school that values community and kindness, we want parents to lean in on each other and know that we're all going through this, and that drop off is hard for everyone. So we see parent tears and we see children's tears, but we know that even though there's sadness and that's normal, that that's an okay part, and it's part of growing up and part of that flexibility and adaptation.
And once they come into the classroom, that quickly the crying stops, and the fun and games begin, and it's the beginning for everybody. And all the students are in the same situation generally. And do you do any special things in the classroom to help the adjustment?
Part of it's just about getting students to recognize that this is okay. So we have parents send in photographs of them to say, "Mom misses you." We're not trying to say, "Forget about them, they don't exist. Your children are smarter than that." But by having them engage with each other, by singing songs, by reading stories, and by giving them the love and attention that they need. It's okay for your child to miss them, but there's also a lot of fun. And the biggest thing is reassuring your children that mom and dad are coming back, or that someone will come to collect them. But as they learn that trust and build that trust in our teachers, who do create really strong relationships, in the early years, the teachers become sort of a caregiving figure. I won't want to say a second parent, because we know that that role is just for you, but another person who loves them and cares for them. And really, I think that helps with the transition.
Right. And I also want to add that before the school year starts, that we offer a open day for the parents to come in with the children, and then they can all open day where we have games and activities, and the children get to see the other children, the teachers get to see the parents get to see the teacher, and everyone sort of sees each other. So when they do come back, they're like, "Oh yes, remember Miss Leslie? You know, you're going to see her again. Oh yes, we can go play with a little bear that was in the classroom." So that first day, that open day that we do, really does help as well. That, for the children coming back the next day or the following day when they have to start school again.
Yeah, it's such an important for them to be familiar with that setting before they get started.
Exactly. So, okay, so going right along, so I have a question here. Yes, Verita is an English speaking school that follows the national curriculum in England and Wales. However, many Greek parents wanted to know if their child will be able to speak, read, and write in Greek. And furthermore, will they be learning taught about the Greek history, the Greek traditions, about the culture? How does Verita handle this?
So we, as an international school, we always value the host country. So we think it's important that students are learning to speak, learn, and read and write in Greek. However, we're also trying to offer the British curriculum, which is rigorous in itself, in the same amount of time. So we don't offer the Greek curriculum in the same way that your children would get at a Greek public school or a Greek private school. However, your children will be learning Greek based on ministry requirements beginning in reception. So in the early years, we believe that with our 2 and 3 year olds, that we should really be using brain research to be speaking English around them, helping them acquire English, and using that language so that when they're ready to then transition to reading and writing and learning in English throughout the rest of their time at Verita, they have that strong background from when they were young and learning it almost natively. When we begin to introduce letters and sounds and phonics and reading and writing in our reception classes for our 4 year olds, we do that in tandem with the Greek language. So as they begin to learn and read and write in English, in turn, they do the same thing in Greek. So the ministry requires us to have 4 times a week for Greek, and they will have at least 4 days a week with a qualified Greek teacher teaching them those letters and sounds and able to read and write in Greek. Now, additionally, we will offer enrichment programs after school for students who want to have more time than the allotted time in school to really make sure that they're trying to keep up or have a better, stronger sense of their Greek in terms of their peers at public schools. Now, in terms of traditions, culture, everything else, history, geography, one of the things that our international primary curriculum and our international early years curriculum does is it centers everything they're learning about in their unit of inquiry. The theme that they're learning about always begins with the host country culture. So, for example, if they are learning about celebrations, so there's a year 2 unit on celebrations, they'll talk about Greek weddings, or at this time of year, it would be Orthodox Easter or Independence Day. And they begin with what's local and what children know. And then they move that globally. So we've talked about how we celebrate New Year in Greece. Now let's look at Chinese New Year. So they're able to anchor new knowledge to what they already know. So they build on knowledge of their own traditions from there. Another example is in year 3, they have a unit on communities. So they'll be looking at urban, rural, and suburban communities across the world, but they'll begin in Greece, and they'll begin probably by doing a bus tour around Athens and learning about what the city they live in looks like before we start to explore other urban centers like Tokyo or New York City. So it always starts with a strong sense of who they are. And we incorporate that with field trips to history museums, to local places, bringing in experts locally. And then, of course, we want to give them the international education. So we take what they know from Greece, and then we move that and stretch that knowledge to the international context.
Okay, just had a little problem with losing you. Can you hear us, Mason?
Yeah.
For a second there, I lost, but I got the main point. So the Greek, they're getting the Greek, which that's important.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, so we're an inquiry-based school. We have project-based. We have lots of activities. Of course, we have follow the curriculum of England and Wales and have all the academic sides, so academic properties. But what kind of teaching materials do you use in school? Do you have books? Do you use iPads, computers?
We use a lot of different resources in our class. So in our early years, it's a lot more hands-on objects. So it's magnifying glasses to go outside and look at the insects.
Can you start that?
Sorry. And we use a lot of different materials, and it depends on the context and what we're doing. So in the early years, when we do a unit on insects, the children go outside and they use magnifying glasses and containers, and they look at the world around them, exploring it that way. When they're learning about stories or loose parts, sometimes they're building with cardboard or blocks or hands-on materials. We also have a full set of libraries in our class with different fiction and nonfiction books for our children to read, to enjoy, but also begin to research even at a young age. And we begin to implement technology with tablets as they grow up the school, but it's more for robotics and creating over consuming. So we don't believe in students just sitting on their iPads clicking through apps. We want them to use them to create slides, to create documents, to create documentaries, to be making something rather than consuming something. We believe that technology is a tool for transferring knowledge and transforming it, not to be inactive consumers.
So basically, you're saying the computers and the laptops and for the research, not actually research, and because we lost you a little bit there.
Sorry. So yeah, absolutely. Just for researching and for creating.
Great. Okay, well, so, well, I was going to do this question first, but I want to actually lead into this question. Another frequently asked question and an important question is, how does the school deal with discipline and behavioral issues?
That is a really good question. So we believe in being front-footed on this. So as a school that values social emotional learning, we think that we should be trying to prevent behavior issues. And we believe that behavior is a way for children to communicate. So if children are behaving in a way that, is less than desirable, it's usually because they might be hungry, they might need attention, there might be something that's causing that behavior. And we believe that we have to be self-regulation or behavior detectives and look into what's causing that in the first place. At the same time, we also recognize that children are children and they're going to make mistakes in maths and they're going to make mistakes in reading and they're going to make mistakes with their behavior. And we believe that that behavior should be taught the same way that we teach science or writing or spelling, that it's something that we learn from mistakes and it's not something that should be punished. So some of the ways that we try to help children recognize their feelings and come to a place where behavior problems don't happen is beginning our day with mindfulness. So we know that there's a lot of chaos. As a parent, I know when we're trying to pack kids' bags up and get breakfast and get to school, sometimes that morning routine is chaotic. And we have that 15-minute soft start for children to come in. And then after that, each day begins with mindfulness. So we know mornings aren't calm for families. It's difficult to get out the door, get everyone ready for work. And we feel like after we've settled in, to take that moment, to have some breaths, to find our calm, even with our littlest learners, it's a good way to just get started and set up for the day. Now, another tool for that we have in our classrooms are self-regulation corners. We call them different things so that the kids understand them. So the older children call it a Zen zone, the middle years call it Chillville, and our littlest ones call them their peace corners. And this area in the classroom is somewhere children can go when they are feeling these big feelings. So if they're feeling stressed or annoyed or bothered or overwhelmed, they know that they can remove themselves and go to that peace corner where there may be sensory tools for them to squeeze or look at or touch. And with our little ones, that's an indicator that they may need an adult to co-regulate with them. So that's where the teaching assistant may want to pop over and hold their hand or help them take breaths or remind them of those tools. So we really try to teach kids that to recognize when we're feeling like we may behave or we do feel a different way, and then find ways to calm them down before we see those big behaviors. So at the beginning of the year, oh, sorry, Leslie, were you?
No, I was just looking at some questions parents are writing.
Mm-hmm. All right. When the year begins, our teachers work with the children to create what we call essential agreements. So we don't call these rules because they're not created by us and enforced down, but actually created with the children. And they're framed together around happiness for everyone. So what can we do that would ensure that everyone in our classroom community is happy? And our first few social emotional learning lessons of the year are framed around what is being a good friend? What does it mean to be a bully? How do you calm yourself? And then within these rules that we create as a class in class meetings, the children feel that ownership of their learning and of these rules, and then they know what the expected behavior is. When that behavior is not expected, because again, kids do make mistakes and behave undesirably sometimes, we're then able to come and hold class meetings and talk about possible solutions, use puppets, role play, figure out how we can help that child come back to that zone of calm and what we could do next time. So use it as a learning opportunity, not an opportunity to shame or point fingers. Now, one of the things we do believe in as a school centered around kindness, we don't believe in just letting this go either. We don't want kids to think that, oh, because we believe in self-regulation, that I can get away with these things and that there will be no consequences. So while we don't believe in punishment, we do believe in consequences. Now, natural consequences are the most ideal form. So if I tell a child not to run in the hall and he runs and falls down, well, he's probably already learned his lesson. I'm not going to apply an additional consequence to it. We know as adults that usually when we learn things the hard way, we remember them. Now, there's not always going to be a natural consequence for each action. And at the same time, we don't always want to allow for a natural consequence. So as parents, if your child is running into the road, you're not going to let them run into the road and get hit by a car. We're going to apply what we call a logical consequence. So logical consequences are related to the behavior, and they're used as a teaching moment. So if a child is throwing food in the cafeteria rather than taking something away or making him sit in the corner, the logical consequence would be to clean it up. Now, before just applying a consequence, what we like to do is frame consequences as a choice and offer children a warning that what they're doing or their behavior isn't desirable. So if a child is shouting out and not following rules of maybe putting up their hand or addressing their needs for a conversation, I might say to that child, you can choose to put up your hand and be a part of our conversation, and we really want to hear your words. So framing that positively, or you can choose to continue like this and you won't be able to be a part of our discussion. So that children recognize what the right choice is that's framed positively, but also that their behavior is a choice. It's not about pleasing the teacher or doing the right thing per se. It's about owning that behavior and knowing that what we do is something that we choose.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow, that's great. That's really great. So we live in Greece and we have beautiful weather outside. And do we get to use the outdoor a lot? Do the children spend time outside?
So we absolutely love getting kids outside. We know that that is where they thrive. And as much as possible, we want them out there. Now, most of the time, the teachers and the children all want to be there together. So sometimes we go outside and, like I said, an alien has crashed, or other times children are looking for insects. When they're learning about habitats, we take them to forests or ponds, or when we're learning about plants, we take them out to garden. We know that kids and humans thrive when there's space and fresh air. So all of the time, as often as we can, we take them outside. Even when it doesn't relate to the curriculum, on a lovely day, and I think for me, this was something that I took very much from when I lived in Africa. If it's nice outside and we can go out there and learn, we do. So I will see teachers outside with their maths books teaching maths. I will see kids writing or reading quietly. When the environment enables being outside, we very much like to do that. And we have a very play-based curriculum and an inquiry-based curriculum that often involves being outside to do the science or to look at things in the real world. So as much as we can, we like to get kids outside, even if there's just extra breaks where kids need to move their bodies or have those movement breaks. That's an opportunity to go outside. I can see that some questions have come up about Greek again, just to be clear. So we actually begin before year one. Reception is our 4-year-old program. It leads the first year of sort of British education in that sense. So in order to get our students ready with Greek, they will begin during our 4-year-old reception program. And then of course, 4 times a week from year one all the way through.
And they have the programs in case whoever sent the question wasn't part of it. They have the enrichment programs that are after school that we do a more intense Greek, and you can choose that to do every day after school. So you can have more hours per day, every day of the week. The enrichment programs will be every day of the week. Okay, so, all right. So for someone who's interested to come to Verita School, what kind of discounts does Verita offer? And there's this 500 registration fee. in order for me to enroll, and what is that 500 registration for?
So that 500 euro registration fee is a one-time contribution for new students to set up their enrollment. It's also a placeholder to make sure that we have space and that parents are committed. So as we begin to grow and have a waiting list, it's a way to see that parents are committed to coming with us rather than shopping around, so that we can plan for the right amount of teachers, for the right amount of resources. But as a school that's centered around kindness, right now we know that financially things aren't certain for all parents with their jobs and with their work. So normally this is a non-refundable deposit to show that you're truly committed as a placeholder. However, we are still collecting that right now, but we know that people's finances are up in the air for many of our families. So this year we will be offering a refund for those families whose financial situation changes and they need that support or that money back.
That's great, great. And can you talk about, like, I know I wanted to mention the early bird, for the early bird registration that happens until the April 30th. For those parents that do enroll by April 30th, there is a 15% discount on each child's registration. So it's a good opportunity to take. And if you have a second child, it's also 5% off for every second, third child that you have. So it's a good opportunity if you are thinking to enroll to try to do it before April 30th, so you can have this discount that's very helpful during this time. Okay, well, we finally came to our last question.
Mhm.
And I think it's really the most important question, summing up everything that we just talked about, is what can my child do with a Verita education when we finish? He goes through all these years and is done and has had this Verita education, and what can you do?
I think it's the question of what can't they do? We, especially when they begin with us early on, as you guys are starting with such young kids, we want to have them continue with us the whole way through. And though we're starting with the international early years curriculum and moving through to the primary curriculum, the middle years curriculum, the British General Certificate of Education, and ending with the IB or the Verita Greek track so that they can do the Panhellenic exams, we're really providing students with options to go anywhere they want. So the IB diploma program is the end of our track if you choose to take the IB route. And what the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program offers is a passport to universities anywhere in the world. The diploma program is the most recognized high school diploma or secondary school diploma in the world. And because of its rigor and the intensity and how well developed it is and how well recognized it is in countries around the world, it gives students options to get in wherever they'd like. Schools in Canada, the United States, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, they see that not only is this very difficult and very rigorous, but they often want IB students in their institutions because the IB program isn't just a set of courses, it's a full philosophy. It has a learner profile where students are balanced and communicators and inquirers, and they want that type of person to be coming out of their universities. Now, additionally, we realize that many Greek parents want their children to go to Greek universities. And while the IB is recognized by Greek universities, while the Greek universities recognize the International Baccalaureate for students from around the world, for their local students, they need to write the Panhellenic exams. So we offer 2 tracks. Students can take the IB route, mostly for students that choose to go abroad. However, the IB does offer Greek language and literature, and they can continue with some Greek and study on the side with extra tuition for the Panhellenic and be able to still write that with their IB diploma program. But we also offer a 2-year track where students finish their secondary school with a Verita diploma, which will be accredited through the Council of International Schools. and then they'll be able to write their Greek exams and go to Greek universities.
That's the most that they can write the Greek exams, that they'll be prepared to take these Greek exams, and therefore they'll have to choose the Greek route, and then they get that information. That's important.
Now, again, Leslie, one of the questions that's been asked a lot of us is in regards to homework. And I think we could address that quickly now as well. I know you've probably had some parents that have asked about what that is and what that looks like. Is that true?
Sure.
Right, so one of the things we like to look at rather than homework is call it home learning. So we believe that in strong family involvement in what we're doing, but not around making parents work or be teachers. So home learning is different from homework because it's about engaging in what the students are doing. So if they're doing a unit on communities, it's about going for walks around your community and looking at the people in the buildings. If they're doing a unit on chocolate, it's about looking for fair trade or ingredients at the supermarket. We want our parents to show children that what they're learning in the four walls of the classroom applies to the real world. And since you're with them out in that big wild world, it's so important as their first teacher, as parents, to be able to help them, guide them, and show those connections. We know that education works best when the teacher hands it to the parents, when their children are picked up, and then that the children pass it back at the end of the day. Now, in addition to that, we believe in nightly reading. We think that readers are leaders, and readers are people that are going to change the world. And while we teach reading skills at school, we think it's essential that parents are reading with and to their child every single day based on that practice. On top of that, there will sometimes be some revision work that's sent home for children to do independently, but it's not for parents to be sitting over them. It's rather just guided practice for something they've done at school that day. In addition, we know how busy our parents are with piano or football or whatever extracurricular activities that children do. So this is usually with our early years, no more than about 10 minutes a night. And we give flexibility and time where we send the homework out on a Monday and it may not be asked to be returned for a week's time, so that they have that time to do it at a time that suits them and when children are in a place where they're ready to learn.
Perfect. Michael, any other questions that parents are feeding in?
That was a lot of information, guys. Really covered it all, I think. I think the one question I have for you, Mason, is you have really had an interesting educational career. I mean, you've really traveled the world. You've been in a number of schools, in a number of different environments, in a number of different communities, and you've really established yourself, I mean, quite legitimately as one of the thought leaders in education, and particularly the inquiry-based education and the ieyc and the IPC programs. I'm curious, as someone who's been in all those different environments, what your experience has been as a teacher and as a principal and as a thought leader at Verita, as a school in general compared to these other schools that you've been involved with, or as compared to the educational model as a whole.
I think the educational model provides flexibility for learning, and that's what's so wonderful about it. There's a lot of programs that claim to be inquiry based in blocks of 2 40-minute lessons, or someone that's just doing STEM or engineering, whereas our program of inquiry encompasses everything we do. So if we're learning about chocolate or dinosaurs or communities or fairy tales, children go deep into that in their literacy learning, in their reading, in their writing, in their science. Everything is so well connected. And I think that because we have the time and space and flexibility and encouragement to get students to ask questions and to work not as an all-knowing teacher, but as a mentor or a guide on the side to help kids find answers, we see that our kids have agency and ownership over their learning. And that, to me, is what deep inquiry is all about. It's about not knowing what to do or what the information is, but knowing how to find information and knowing how to ask the right questions, because I think that is a way more important skill than ever before. I mean, most of the knowledge we know is here in my phone. I can Google it. It's what I do with it or what I want to find or how I respond to that. So creating inquirers is one of the, I think, most important skills that we have to do. Because if the knowledge is there, what we need to teach children to do is to ask good questions.
Yeah, yeah. I think that I was thinking today, interestingly enough, that when I graduated from high school, the first IBM PC was released. And I was thinking how much the world has changed and how unexpected those changes were from when I graduated from high school. And I think that I was ill prepared going out in the world and really had to learn these lessons on my own, in order to be successful, in order to be happy, in order to build relationships. And it was really I don't feel school prepared me for the life that laid ahead of me.
Mhm.
I look at how fast technology is transitioning the world and how fast things are changing, and I can only imagine what the world is going to be like in 2040 when a new child entering school today is going to have to face. And I think that inquiry-based learning is really the only way to prepare them for whatever they have to address. But I think the other side of the equation, which I think is very unusual about Verita School, which is one of my, which is one pillar of the educational foundation that I am really excited about, is not only preparing them with the skills to be successful, but also the social emotional wisdom that will give them the ability that whatever happens, I almost look at it, I personally look at it as an immunity booster, so that no matter what happens to them, they have the social emotional awareness to create a life of well-being for themselves. And a lot of schools, to me, it's a buzzword. Every school I hear says, "Oh, we do social emotional learning. We do social emotional learning." But I think that our school really approaches it differently. Can you just give us just a very brief overview of your experience with that and how we bring that into the classroom?
Well, I think one of the things that you touch upon is how things are changing and why social emotional learning is important. And right now, with this COVID-19 situation, I'm really noticing that this is the time for those skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are stressed and
Right.
businesses are crashing, and we need that resilience, that empathy, that compassion, and all of these things. But I also think that at a lot of schools that say they're doing SEL, it's an add-on.
Yeah.
So it's something that they do for 2 40-minute sessions a week, or it's something they call the hidden curriculum or the soft skills. And we know that we don't hide it. So one of the things we say is that we make time for this every day, and that SEL isn't adding something to the educational plate, but that it is the plate. And everything we do is based on around social emotional learning, because we know that when kids are emotionally aware and emotionally intelligent, that we get that time back in the day that we teach it because they're in a place where they're ready to learn. Now, on top of that, we have a hard time with people calling them the soft skills.
Yeah, I
So many adults
even when you
that
said that,
they
even when you
can't
said that, it's
explain
like,
their
oh
feelings
no,
or
no, no, that's not true. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I really look at social emotional learning as a superpower. I mean, it's you have to really be grounded and centered and connected and a strong person to be able to access and be aware and manage your emotions. I mean, I think it's one of the hardest skills. I don't think it's the softest skill. I think it's one of the hardest skills.
absolutely. And then in terms of the inquiry, the learner profile, the 21st century skills, we're seeing it with our kids right now. It's amazing to see the projects that have come out of home learning. I mean, children are scheduling appointments on Google Calendar with their teacher. They're having
Yeah.
Google Meet Hangouts. They're able to manage their time, make sensible choices, be resilient. And the way that they have adjusted to this online learning environment, which is a massive change, I think is well above some of the schools where they're not preparing kids with skills like adaptability, like resilience, like self-management, and um, self-regulation. So our kids can find their calm, recognize that the world is changing, and be able to adapt to that. And I think this has just been such a hard moment and not something that we would wish upon our kids, but that they've really impressed us with how they've transitioned to this new environment.
I look at this. I'm sorry, Leslie. I'm sorry. I look at this as what's happening in the world today as a real wake up call to education, a real wake up call to the skills that are that we as parents need to adapt and that our children have to be prepared for in their life. And I think that and I think it really is something that makes me and Leslie and Richard, the founder of the school, really spend a lot of time discussing. We're fortunate that we can introduce these skills and these educational practices to the community, because I think that they're even more valuable now, seeing what's happening in the world in such a exaggerated way. And it's I don't say that casually. I mean, it's horrible what's happening, and it's amazing what's happening. But I really am proud that we can bring our form of education to the community, particularly Greece, which has been amazingly successful in managing this virus and this pandemic. And we're really proud that we can bring this to the community and introduce these types of learning skills and social emotional skills at a time that it's so important,
Absolutely. And I think that the world is changing so quickly, like we said, and I want to go back to this, is that the way I think maybe our education for our time, it was okay and it was enough. But now the spike of change has just shot up and is changing, that those skills are what we've learned and how we were being taught doesn't work anymore. There's a big gap. We're missing some important skills. And with the inquiry-based learning, with the social emotional, Verita's giving the students the skills and the tools that they will need to be not only successful, but happy in their life. And all throughout their school years when they go out into the workforce. And it's very important that we start early and start young with the children. And just quickly mention why it's so important to start young in the children. This is important. You can learn these tools anytime, but it's especially important if you can start young.
I think from the ages of 3 to 5 is when our brain is going through the most active neurodevelopment, and when we're establishing the neural pathways, and it sets them up for a life of success and a life of happiness if you can really start to build the appropriate neural pathways and prune the inappropriate neural pathways. And using social emotional learning and using inquiry-based learning are really focused on the prefrontal cortex, which gives them the particular skills that they need to deal with adversity, to assess their well-being, to make responsible choices, to be able to manage their emotions. And so by doing this young, you're setting them up for success. It's not that they can't do it in their older ages because of the neuroplasticity that we see in the brain, but it's certainly much more difficult to do it at an older age. But I just want to come back to one point that Leslie mentioned. At the end of the day, as a father of 4 children, to me, the most important thing is that my kids are happy. No matter what they do, I want my kids to be happy. And that, I think that we used to say, well, I don't care if they're a cab driver. I just want them to be happy. But the funny thing is, there aren't any cab drivers anymore. There's Uber drivers now. So that joke doesn't even apply. Things have changed so quickly that we don't even have cab drivers anymore. So that's just another indication of how fast technology is working. And so is there anything else you want to add? I know that we said that this would be 1 hour. We're coming up on 56 minutes. Is there anything else you want to add to this, Mason?
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think that we think these cell skills come from here, but they're actually very cognitive.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing. They are skills that can be taught and that are learned, and that it's important that we do that. And when Leslie mentioned, the sense of change and, moving in 21st century skills, which is the buzzword, I think there's always been a sense of urgency for educational reform. I think that people want it, and that where we're so lucky as a private education, we're able to do that. I think a lot of school systems across the world are still stuck with bureaucracy or the way things were. And there's this comfort and feeling that I think we all have. We've all been to school, and my child's doing the same activities I was doing. And there's this nostalgia associated with the learning that we did in school, but we need to sort of wake up and change. And I think we're really lucky to be in a situation where we don't have to worry about boards or ministries, and we can just focus on doing what's right for our kids.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what Verita's offering.
Thank you for that. Thank you,
Thank
Mason.
you.
Leslie,
Thank you so much.
is there anything else you want to add to
No,
this?
I think that's all.
You know, Mason,
Thank you.
we're honored to have you as a part of the school. You're an amazing asset. You're an amazing contribution. You know, we really can't emphasize strongly enough how much importance we put behind our education and how much importance we say, listen, families, children, it's a new world. It's a new way of being. You know, find the solution that will give your kids the happiest, most successful lives possible, and we hope we can provide that to them. You know, this has been a great talk. You've given us amazing information, Leslie. Thank you so much for bringing these questions to us. Everyone who's participated in this, we really appreciate you watching. We appreciate your questions, and we're so excited for everyone that joins us in September 2020. Amazingly so, we're getting a lot of response. We're getting a lot of enrollments. You know, we're starting out small because we want to set the culture properly. So if you're interested in joining our school, please contact us as early as possible at info@veritaschool.gr. You can email us there, and we will get back to you with any other questions or any information or anything you need. And we're happy to set up virtual online meetings so you can meet us and talk to us and talk to our team. And I think that wraps it up for today, Mason.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for having me.
Bye-bye.
Leslie, thank you. And everyone, be healthy and happy Easter. We wish everyone the best. And be safe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.